or eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Call of the roll. Members, this honorable House now resumes its sitting. And just before we start the sitting and we have the call of the roll, I want to recognize and welcome. They're joining us by Zoom, students and teachers from the Hine Seminary School in Montego Bay. I'm delighted to have them join with us. I have history with them as my son went to school there and in fact did his exams to move on to high school from Hine Seminary. So we're delighted to have you join us this afternoon. Welcome to the sitting of Parliament. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Montague, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malawu Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Charles, Mr. Terry Long, Miss Smith, Mr. Main, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Mr. Green, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Miss Robinson, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Witter, Mr. Wright.
Statements by ministers. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, the statement today will be from the Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honorable Dr. Christopher Tufton. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Dr. Tufton, do we have copies for Mr. Guy? A copy
yes,
of
I gave copies
Very well,
to.
thank you.
Yes? Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thanks to my colleagues. Madam Speaker, the government of Jamaica since 2006 has invested significantly in the 2016 has invested significantly in the implementation of the Vision 2030 goal of having a healthy population. This, Madam Speaker, has been evidenced by the introduction of the no user fee policy, which was directly aimed at providing to the people of Jamaica, especially those in the lower socioeconomic groups, and also greater access to healthcare services. Since the introduction of that policy, the government has been working assiduously to improve the service quality to ensure that we are providing universal access to health to the people. Madam Speaker, one of the main issues that affects the service delivery of health facilities is the lack of appropriate infrastructure to give information to clinicians so that they can assess and diagnose illnesses and devise the appropriate treatment. This has resulted in patients spending days, and unnecessarily so due to the lack of capacity, in hospital beds, waiting to raise the financing privately through friends, whether here or abroad, or relatives, for diagnostic tests to be done in the private sector so that an assessment can be made of their condition and treatment follows. This delay impacts, Madam Speaker, several aspects of the healthcare delivery, specifically bed stay time in hospital. This then, of course, has a ripple effect and impacts the turnover rate of beds and ultimately contributes to overcrowding, which we are very familiar with. Another factor, Madam Speaker, that affects the delivery of healthcare, especially the impact of overcrowding, is the number of social cases that are resident in hospitals. Some, Madam Speaker, as long as 7 years, meaning that someone is in a hospital bed for 7 years, even though they have been released to go home to their family members. Social cases, Madam Speaker, are persons who have been discharged from hospital but have not been received by their relatives. In many cases, these persons may have mobility challenges or may be otherwise incapacitated, in many cases due to one form or another of chronic ailment or mental illness, Madam Speaker. Given the health system's moral duty to care, we are unable to completely discharge process, and these individuals are left in the care of the health system for extended periods of time. Given that they use beds, they reduce significantly the turnover rate and ultimately contribute to the overcrowding in hospital. Madam Speaker, currently, or we have seen, I should say, up to 5% of our total bed capacity in some instances being occupied by social cases, which means with a full capacity of about 5,000 plus beds, we have seen in cases up to 300 and sometimes more of our beds being occupied by persons who literally have converted hospital care into infirmary care at the expense, of course, of others using who really needs it. Madam Speaker, in designing the intervention to address these problems, the Ministry understood that there needed to be a short, medium, and long-term approach to ameliorating the conditions that were being experienced both by patients and by caregivers, and by extension, the population. As such, the plan of action, as detailed in the 10-year strategic plan, Vision for Health 2030, outlined the mission of the Ministry to right-size the infrastructure needs of our healthcare facilities and ensure the capacity development actions were in place to meet the changing demands for healthcare services in the future. To date, the Ministry has a database of all equipment within the public health system, and a comprehensive assessment has been done. This is diagnostic equipment Based on this assessment, over 70%, Madam Speaker, sad to say, of the equipment in public facilities are either near or at the end of their useful life. The assessment has also shown that over 40% of equipment bought by the government of Jamaica are out of use due to lack of maintenance or insufficient maintenance or lack of appropriate parts for repair. And this is an ongoing issue. It didn't start this year, last year, or many years before. It's just a part of the culture which has contributed to capacity issues. Madam Speaker, we have to fix this situation, and the government has commenced a program to do so. We have started under the investment IADB, the IADB-funded Health Services Support Project, where an investment for this particular purpose of over 700 million Jamaican dollars would be made for medical equipment at the Spanish Town Hospital, St. Anne's Bay Hospital, and the Maypen Hospital. And this investment will see the purchase of 3 CT scan machines, X-ray machines, dental equipment, and equipment for our operating theatres. In the meantime, Madam Speaker, in 2019, the Ministry of Health and Wellness commenced the implementation of the Enhancing Healthcare Services Delivery Project with the objective of improving access to healthcare services within the public health system. The project was designed to work with the private providers of diagnostic services as part of the Ministry of Health and Wellness short and medium-term strategy for the reduction in wait time and to alleviate the overcrowding in hospitals through outsourcing of those diagnostic services at no cost to the patient. The intervention, Madam Speaker, was intended to address the following areas that had been impacting the delivery of services to persons accessing the public health care system. 1, access to diagnostic services. If our hospitals do not have those diagnostic equipment and can't provide those services. Removal of social cases, and the outsourcing of elective surgeries. Madam Speaker, I'm here to comment briefly, give an update on the first 2. Since we began the implementation of Enhancing Healthcare Services Delivery Project in September 2019, over 40,615 tests have been completed under the diagnostic component, Madam Speaker. It means that 40,000 plus Jamaicans who, more often than not, would have been in a public hospital waiting on a CT scan or an X-ray, but the equipment was either absent or not working, were able to go to a private provider under contractual arrangements with the government to access those diagnostic services. And I know, Madam Speaker, that our members of Parliament can relate to this, because many of those persons, when they can't afford it, end up right in the MP's office to ask for them to pay for the CT scan and pay for the X-ray and so on. Well, under this program, the government has provided those services once we can't provide it in the hospital, and over 40,000 Jamaicans have benefited from these services. Services include CT scans, MRIs, ultrasound, mammograms, fluoroscopic studies, and other diagnostic tests. These services were provided, Madam Speaker, at a cost of $1,421,313, Madam Speaker. Of the 40,000, so a significant cost to the taxpayers, to the country, to the government, but in healthcare, Madam Speaker, when those who need it most and could not afford it were able to get it. The 40,000 plus tests completed to date, Madam Speaker, CT scans accounted for 65%, MRIs 13%, and ultrasound 16% of examinations requested by the different hospitals on behalf of their patients, with a higher percentage of females, 53% of the 40,000, accessing services, and 46% being males. Madam Speaker, under this program, and in keeping with our objective for equitable and universal access, poor Jamaicans no longer have to wait to go without diagnostic tests. Madam Speaker, even with COVID, good things are happening in public health, and I want to commend the team for the work that they have been putting out. Madam Speaker, the current cost of these tests are very significant, and it's worth noting, with an MRI costing on average in the private sector some $33,000, CT scan costing $45,000, and ultrasound about $8,000. So, persons would have had to find those resources. The direct social transfer to the individuals who need support not only contributes, Madam Speaker, to the social safety net, and sometimes we only register or assess, Mr. Minister of Finance, our capacity as government to respond through PATH. But the truth is, this is an indication of another element of our social response to those who are deprived and cannot afford it. And it's worth mentioning. It enables ease to critical information by doctors, so having done the test, doctors can quickly diagnose, other health professionals can then meet to treat the needs of the patients. Madam Speaker, to be clear, again, costs are borne in this case not by the patient but by the government. Based on the first year completion, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has conducted its own assessment of the intervention, and preliminary findings indicate that as a result of the implementation of the project, bed stay time had been reduced on average by 2 days. Now, it may not sound much if you look at this data of persons who are staying in our hospitals, Madam Speaker. We have about 360,000 Jamaicans in that period. And if on average you have a patient, because they can get the test done quickly, reducing their stay time from 7 or 8 days to 6 or 5 days, it creates the turnover and improves the efficiency for more persons to access bed space. And Madam Speaker, we have seen the benefits of that, because even though we have experienced significant overcrowding in terms of COVID wards, in terms of regular treatment, particularly for those who need diagnostic assessment, we have seen a marked reduction in that because of this program. So, Madam Speaker, this has been a good partnership in our estimation between the private sector and the public sector. Madam Speaker, signing the first segment in 2019, we now have 16 service providers across the island providing national coverage, providing the coverage for these facilities. I have them here in the presentation. We advertised and we negotiated. And, they range from Dan Hope, Chris Radiology, Imaging and Intervention Associates, Apex, Elite Diagnostics, St. Jago Ultrasound, Oasis Imaging, Pines Imaging, Erin Radiology, Island Radiology, Dr. Reddy's Imaging Center, New Royal Imaging Center, North Coast Imaging, Dynamic Imaging. Essentially, Madam Speaker, we have established a relationship in every parish to ensure that we give coverage right across the length and breadth of Jamaica. The partnership, therefore, Madam Speaker, I certainly can say, based on our internal assessment, has been successful, but to be absolutely transparent, we intend to engage external capacity to do an assessment to ensure that the resources were spent in the right way, for the right reason, benefiting the Jamaican people. And we do believe that that is important, Madam Speaker. Now, this is short to medium term. Over time, under the IADB program and other programs, we intend, of course, to equip our hospitals with the basic minimum diagnostic equipment, but still maintain a relationship for when we have gaps in the system, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I turn quickly now to social cases. The pandemic and the urgent need for bed space in hospital further underscore the importance that the project placed on the removal of social cases from hospital and defining social cases as patients released but who remain in hospitals because there's nowhere to go. And more often than not, their families abandon them. We wish to thank, Madam Speaker, firstly, my colleague, Minister and his team, Local Government and Rural Development, the Honourable Desmond McKenzie, for partnering with the Ministry of Health and Wellness for the creation of 40 bed spaces at the Golden Age Home in Kingston and Maypen Infirmary that facilitated the immediate transfer of 36 social cases that enabled the provision of these spaces to provide medical attention for COVID patients. And I say thanks to the Minister. The Ministry, Madam Speaker, provided $50 million for the addition of the space at the Golden Age Home in Kingston and Maypen Infirmary. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the Ministry continued its thrust to improve the capability of social workers in the Ministry through training and the identification of alternative strategies and methodologies for the management of social cases. In a sense, Madam Speaker, we have seen it as part of our duty, not just to treat but also to manage the homeless, essentially, giving them the appropriate counseling and assessment that is necessary. We also had put 40 beds at Spanish Town Infirmary, Madam Speaker, through this partnership and relocated the same amount of persons, social cases from Spanish Town Hospital. Madam Speaker, 174 social cases are currently in the hospitals, and we remain resolute in our efforts to remove these social cases from hospitals and have begun the process, Madam Speaker, very important, and I've said this before, but we are well down the wicket now, of pursuing or exploring our legal options and where possible taking legal action against families who have abandoned their relatives in hospitals and are utilizing the resources of these persons that could be channeled in their care and protection, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is really unfair. It is unfair for persons who need a hospital bed and cannot get one because it is occupied for multiple years by persons who would have been released but have nowhere to go. I believe that the state has to maintain compassion for those persons because they are victims, but we should not confuse the compassion we show to those persons by extending it to the family members who exploit those persons' situations and are taking advantage of their assets where those assets exist. And we do have evidence to suggest that those assets exist and these persons, more often than not, have been abandoned. So we work with local government to make the transfer where the bed space is available because they control and manage the infirmaries. But in many cases, these persons are not infirm. They're not supposed to be in an infirmary. They really and rightfully are supposed to be at their homes, being taken care of, and in many cases, taking advantage of the possessions that they have created during their working years. Madam Speaker, in January 2022, we will begin the process of testing in the legal system by filing civil suits against families of persons who have abandoned relatives in health facilities. We intend to test these cases to see what the court's opinion of this particular situation is likely to be, and from that opinion, we'll explore where possible an adjustment in policy or law to hold those persons more accountable. Through our social work case management process, we have identified families that are able to support the care and treatment of these social cases, but have refused to take the responsibility. Madam Speaker, we know of cases of persons who are receiving pension from overseas, but relatives have refused to use these funds to support their relatives in hospital or indeed in other care. We know of instances where persons have been abandoned in hospital and relatives have rented their properties and refused to use these resources to care for the owners of the property and basically abandon them in our hospital system. We intend to address this directly, Madam Speaker, firstly by reaching out to these family members and hopefully having a dialogue with them to try to help them to appreciate what their responsibilities are. But failing that, Madam Speaker, we will take any follow-up action that is necessary to see how we can change the attitude and the approach by putting in place the policies and, if necessary, the laws to protect these persons who have become victims. On this matter, Madam Speaker, finally, it has been the practice of some Jamaicans to during the Christmas period, and you know, it's sad, but it's true. We have evidence of it, to abandon their relatives in hospital during the holiday season. Literally take them to the hospital and drop them off and pick them back up after the holiday period. This practice is usually done for the aged and the infirmed. In other words, some people want to go party or want to go enjoy some freedom, and they see the hospital as a care facility to take care of their loved ones. The practice is expanded. The problem has created greater levels of overcrowding during the season, during this time of year, because it means more admissions. And Madam Speaker, remember now, we can't turn someone away who is brought and placed in a hospital setting. The Public Health Act does not allow it. And therefore, we have to take these persons in. And as I said, these persons are really victims. And we're not in the business as a government with showing compassion to abandon the victims. So we're not arguing about the need for care for these individuals. Our problem, our challenge are those who are behind these actions, who are really cruel and taking advantage of situations and allowing the public health system to be under further stress because of this. So, Madam Speaker, I want to use the opportunity in light of the coming season that we ensure that our relatives who need it take their medication so they do not become ill and need hospitalization, ensure they attend their usual visits to the doctor, to the health center, the clinic, to avoid their condition becoming acute and therefore need hospitalization. The government understands, Madam Speaker, the tremendous challenges that face families in care and support of their elderly and infirm relatives. However, every effort should be made to ensure that persons with chronic diseases take their medication and keep their routine checkup appointments. In closing, Madam Speaker, we have to continue to innovate. We have to continue to respond to the challenges in public health. And I know that the last year or so we have dedicated much of the time and the discussion around public health to the COVID response. But I do want to say to the public and to my colleagues here that good things are happening in public health. The team continues to do all the other things that are necessary to protect the population. But all of us have a responsibility, Madam Speaker. And so I urge us, as we approach this season, giving fair warning that with all the achievements, we can do a lot better if we work together. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, I want to thank you for the update and the good news that over 40,000 Jamaicans have benefited from it. We recognize that you can't have two successive days of bad news, so today is good news, right? But on a more serious note, Minister, the enhanced healthcare service delivery program, yes, it has been helping a lot of patients out there. It has been taking some pressure, as you have indicated, of members of parliament who come, but there's a problem. The first problem is that it is not widely utilized in some of the hospitals, in that the doctors in the hospital who would want to have some of these tests or investigations done give the patient to go and have it on their own. And I've had on many instances to call the SMO of the respective hospital to ask for them to be advised of this particular program so that people who cannot afford it and who do not know about it, so they could ask at the hospital, get that particular service. Secondly, the health centers in this country, and I raised this when you first introduced the program in the Parliament in 2019, that you should consider, the ministry should consider extending it to doctors who practice at the health centers. The health centers see significantly more patients than the hospitals do in terms of chronic diseases and the need for investigations. And there are many who leave the health centers with these request forms to have CT scans done, ultrasounds done, and they have to go on their own and sometimes come to the members of parliament or seek around, pass a hat around to get some funds to do it. There needs to be some proper coordination, Minister, where the health centers, probably under some strict guidelines, but can be allowed to utilize this system also. Minister, I'm glad that you mentioned that this, as you did in 2019, 2 years ago, is a short to medium term program, because the question that I asked then and I'm asking again, you have covered somewhat in your statement, is what of the refurbishing of these facilities in the hospitals? And you mentioned some hospitals under a $700+ million program, which is coming on. But there are many other hospitals that need it. And we recognize that you said under the 10-year plan that others will be done. But, Minister, part of the problem that exists, and you have somewhat highlighted it, is the fact that, one, there is no maintenance of some of the units in the hospitals when they go bad or when they break down. And in addition to what you're proposing to have a complete overhaul of the system with new machines, in tandem with that should be a maintenance program that is going to ensure that you get more out of the life of these machines, that they can be repaired much faster. Because when you look, Minister, recently, when the Linac machine at the St. Joseph's Hospital, that's the one used to treat cancer patients, broke down, it's about 6 months before it was eventually repaired and put back into service. And people who were depending on treatment for cancer, some had to be relocated to Cornwall Regional, but the others could not afford it, and they suffered as a consequence, and their condition got worse. So, similarly, Minister, you need to look at, say, Princess Margaret Hospital. The X-ray unit has been out for a long while. Even if it's repaired now, it has been out for about a year. So in as much as this program is in place, you have to have the ministry looking at the replacement or the repair of these on a timely basis. And I want to suggest to you, Minister, that there are some other tests that you need to add to this program. The people need to do echocardiograms, which are not part of this program, and that is widely used in a lot of hospitals now to determine, and particularly, Minister, in light of the fact that we have increases in hypertension, diabetes, and we have these chronic diseases which significantly result in a lot of cardiovascular disease, that echocardiogram should be added to that list, as well as EEGs, which are electroencephalograms, because a lot of our people have seizures, and they are the ones who can't afford to get this test done. So, Minister, those are some suggestions that I am imploring you to have your technocrats look at. As it relates to the social cases, Minister, I agree with you that it is something that has been a long-standing issue. It is something that the country needs to really address. It is something that the relatives of these persons need to own and hug up. Because, as you have indicated, there are some who finances is not the problem. It's just that it's the care and dedication they put towards their relatives in hospital. But the hospitals also need to have an increased number of social workers in the hospital. And, Minister, I could not sit down without even reflecting on a recent case that came up in social media as well as in mainstream media, Madam Speaker, about the man who complained of his child dying at his newborn at Victoria Jubilee Hospital. And one of the complaints that he had is that after he signed the paper and his spouse went home, they just let go them so. There was no social intervention, no social worker intervention to try to help him through this difficult period. So whilst we we look at, as you have indicated in your statement, some of the social work as it relates to those people who are in hospitals for reasons not related to health. The reality is that the number of social workers in the system needs to be increased. And finally, Minister, you mentioned about the Christmas period, and I agree with you. But part of the problem we have now, and I want to quote you, that they need to go for their routine health checkups and their appointments. It sounds good, Minister, but the reality out there, and because of COVID too, that the clinics sometimes are overwhelmed. And even though the decision has been taken to give prescriptions for a 3-month period as opposed to the 1-month rollover, the reality is that sometimes when the patients go to the pharmacies at the health centers, they do not have sufficient medication to give to them. They do not have some of the medications that are needed. So I would suggest also, Minister, that a relook be done to ensure, because I suspect in many instances it's just the logistics of ensuring that the pharmacies are outfitted. You have advised the Parliament and the country that the NHF is not short of medical supplies, right, in the main. And to get it to these small pharmacies usually is the challenge. So you need to ensure that the system works, that the wheel grinds properly or turns properly so that these can be given to centers such as those in West Kingston, right, in Tivoli and other places, Minister, because at the end of the day, these are the same persons who will end up in the hospitals and create burden on the health system in the hospitals. Thank you.
Pose a question or two to the Minister. I know some persons are of the view that a member of the government side ought not pose a question to a minister simply because there are opportunities to discuss. But the minister has indicated to the Parliament that it is the intention of his ministry and its departments and agency to test matters in the court in relation to the neglect of persons in need of care. And I'm just asking whether the minister is aware that under the Maintenance Act, there is an obligation on children who are not minor to maintain their parents, and that an application can be made, including by a department of government or the local authority. And among the powers of the court include ordering periodic payment to the department of government or to the local authority. And the court is also empowered to make other orders as the circumstances fit. So my question really is whether the ministry intends to test the cases under these provisions of the Maintenance Act, which are perhaps the easiest route to go.
Thank you very much, colleague, on both sides of the House. My colleague on this side, I would like to say advice well taken. Advice well taken. Yes, I am aware. Clearly, we have engaged a legal team, which is one of the reasons I've given an update. We now have a legal team that is preparing the dossier, the files, and in the new year, the plan is to really make a bold statement around this issue. So thank you, Madam AG, and yes, and we will certainly look to you for further advice, given that you sit at a place where we all sit. To my colleague on the opposite side, again, as usual, thank you for your constructive agreement with the statement substantially. I know that you have agreed with all the points raised, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that because I think it's important for us to collaborate around these issues because they are important. I will say that where doctors or even health centers are unaware of this program, the outsourcing, we will make and redouble our efforts to provide greater clarity and information. Remember now, one of the reasons why we speak to this publicly is for patients to know their rights. Under the Patient Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, the patient must have information, and we have an obligation to provide that information. And if they request, we have an obligation to give them at the level of the health center and the hospital. But we will also take up the suggestion of trying to ensure that internally the stakeholders, the doctors, health centers, because the program is there. And as we have seen, the program has offered to 40,000 persons successfully. And I don't see why persons should be refused, because we have not put a cap on the limit. So I take that point. The longer term is about replacement and having hospitals with a minimum level of diagnostic equipment. The truth is, for an emergency, for example, you can't send somebody to an alternate location when they're having a heart attack or they're in a motor vehicle accident, they suffer some trauma. You have to do diagnostic right on spot immediately to treat. And we do appreciate that hospitals, based on their rankings, would require some minimum diagnostics. For the most part, they do have minimum levels of diagnostic equipment. But you're right, the maintenance issues are an issue. I've inherited that, and we're trying to deal with it. One of the things I've said to the team at the regional authorities and as policy coming down from the ministry is that our diagnostic equipment, particularly those we are now purchasing, must be accompanied with a service level agreement. So no equipment should be bought without some sort of service warranty where you are guaranteed a minimum years of service and a maintenance schedule. The challenge is, more often than not, or in many cases, the technical skill sets are not here in the country to deal with some of the maintenance that is required. You speak to the LINAC at St. Joseph's. Let me just say that it is up and running now. Okay, good. So, but it was down for a while. And you're right, we had to transfer patients to Montego Bay and so on. And it is inconvenient. But we have an arrangement for maintenance, but that maintenance requires someone traveling from overseas. In fact, I was astonished when some months ago a complaint was raised to me about a particular piece of equipment. I don't think it's that one, something else. And the maintenance arrangement required someone to fly from Europe to come to Jamaica to service it. And it brings into sharp focus the need not just to have these agreements in place, but also to build capacity, meaning technical capacity. So we are going to have to look at training of local personnel as we procure these increasingly sophisticated equipment that requires that level of technical support.
Minister, would you yield a little? I agree with you in respect of that, but there's also one part of the equation that you have left out, Minister, and in particular where it relates to the LINAC machine, it was a result of funds not readily and timely available, because that machinery also, if truth be told, it can be remotely disabled or enabled. And
so I am not aware that it was about funds, but that has not been brought to my attention, but I can verify if you raise that point. You've been good on the other point, so I'll take your word for it. But I'll still check. But even with the enabling and disabling from a remote location, which I appreciate is true, you can monitor these devices remotely using technology. There are times when you do need the physical presence to change parts and so on. And the point I was making, the substantial point, is that we're going to have to, as part of the new dispensation, train local personnel as part of the purchase agreement of these very sophisticated pieces of equipment. And that is part of the way forward. The other few points you have raised about the need to add some additional services, I will have a conversation with the team about that. We had selected the ones that are most frequently requested, and we can't give all, but those are the more popular ones. The NHF member, you know, under this administration, the expansion of NHF drug serve windows has been the highest it has been since the NHF has been around. And it was done to address the very challenge that you raised, people not having access because of where they live. And it was done through partnership with the private sector, where we actually place a drug serve window in a private pharmacy and monitor, and persons benefit from that outlet. We added almost 150 outlets to the existing NHF window through this private arrangement. And indeed, prescription numbers went up by 1 million. And I know when the Minister of Finance hears of that, he will also assume that it means the cost went up significantly. But more people have had access. And I don't think there could be any, or not a lot of complaints about the NHF's capacity given the expanded window. But again, it's always subject to review, but we have been working on that. On the social cases, you have said you agree with it, and I'm going to request that we really share and join voices on this. I think it's going to require a cultural change. It is unfortunate that we have to now engage the law to enforce the need for persons to take care of their loved ones when they can, not if they can't, but when they can, and when these loved ones and relatives have in fact worked hard and created assets for themselves, but because they have a stroke or incapacitated in one way, shape or form, they end up in a hospital bed and literally have to live there. It's unfair, and I think those who knowingly and willfully do that should be made to answer. And I am happy that the member is supportive of that. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Member Hannah, you may go ahead.
Hi, Minister. And this probably is a question for the Minister of Finance. Have you given any thought, because I know that the Ministry of Industry and Commerce is trying to build your medical tourism industry, and it's difficult to compete with countries like Brazil and India because of the medical equipment. Couldn't it not be a better idea for the government and the cabinet to consider removing income tax from private doctors and reducing the customs duties on their tools of trade so that they can build their own medical and technical capacity with the most advanced medical technologies? In that way, you would have better public-private partnerships so that if the doctors are incentivized by the government, then you could also utilize their services. In other words, if a private doctor is incentivized to that level, I am sure that they would consider giving 2 days to the public sector for mammograms, things like hysterectomies, other male issues, ordinary primary care. In addition to that, I know Jubilee does not have one of the major pieces of equipment for eye surgery. And that's an expensive piece of equipment because you don't have the kind of oxygen levels and electricity sometimes to power these pieces of equipment. So I really would like us to consider whether or not incentivizing private doctors with their tools of trade could redound to a better interest that gives Jamaicans access to better medical health care facilities, reduces the charges, because those private doctors, if there is some kind of arrangement, would have to provide free health care, maybe 1 day a week through their offices, as the trade-off for the government incentivizing them.
Thank you, Member. For fear of breaching the alignment that is required between colleague ministers, I will take under advisement the suggestion and certainly consult. But just to say, currently, medical devices attract very little, if any, duties. Well, the ones that I have received, I think there's almost an automatic request or process that allows any device that is, medical related to support and expand and enhance the quality of medical services to literally pass through the system without much duty.
I know that, and I know the list of devices that are listed that attract very little duty. But the problem is that, and I don't know if anybody else in their constituencies experienced this, but sometimes the patient not only has to wait a very long time to just get an operation, but then some of them have to buy the pin, the anchor, the hole, everything that goes into the surgery if they're doing it at a public hospital. And I use that vernacular because I don't know some of the things. I just know I have to pay for them as an MP, or sometimes I have to go through the CDF. But the doctors from the public hospitals give them a list and say to them, boy, you have to get this equipment to bring there. I'm also talking about the machines, the MRI machines, the dialysis machines, the PET scan machines, those machines that when somebody comes to our office and says, boy, MP, I forgot to do a CT scan, who probably has stage 3 cancer, and unless I or any one of us in here, because I'm sure all of us in here have had to go into our pockets every week to take out the $25,000 or the $30,000 or for an MRI, which can cost them $70,000. We need to get to a point where these machines can be made available. It is those machines that I speak about. And also, we're losing a lot of our younger doctors because they want to go away to the more high-tech facilities to not only learn, but have and practice on these machines, because we don't have them available here. We have to find a way to do that. And the Minister of Finance I know well, right? And I would ask him to consider if we could have a system, member from Northwest St. Andrew, where we really look at a holistic approach for public-private sector partnerships that has and gives those doctors who can afford it and a system where they can bring the most state-of-the-art machines in, because they can lease them and send them back perhaps, and then pin them to making sure that they take some of the load off of the public sector. If I know I can send 10 of my women or 10 of my men who need different screenings to a private doctor somewhere, and they have a relationship with the government to get that free of cost, I think it would redound to the best interests of the country. And I don't think you're going to lose a lot, Nigel. Sorry. I don't think you're going to lose a lot when you look at it. But we need to consider it.
Again, Madam Speaker, so I hear the member. In a sense, that's what we're doing under the program that I've just announced, because what we're actually doing is contracting to these private providers. They are benefiting from the business because we're paying them, and by expansion of their businesses, then they have an opportunity also to secure equipment. And as I said, many of these entities and these equipments don't attract a lot of duty. As it relates to income tax, that's not my, that's kind of bigger than my pay scale. I'm part of an executive arm of government that discusses these matters, and I'm sure the minister's ear is perked up when you spoke about reduction of income tax. No, what I think at this point doesn't really matter. But I take your input, and we will certainly consider it. Thank you.
Announcements. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House, first obtained, public business. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, on the matter of public business today, we will take firstly a bill shortly entitled the International Corporate and Trustee Service Providers Change of Name and Amendment Act 2021, and it will be taken by the Minister of Finance. Thereafter, Madam Speaker, we will seek to continue the debate on the state of constituencies, when the speakers will be the Member of Parliament for Westmoreland Central, Mr. George Wright, and the member from Clarendon Central, the Honourable Lester Michael Henry. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I opened debate on the bill 2 Tuesdays ago. The bill is an uncontroversial one. It's to amend the International Trust and Corporate Services Act in keeping with our commitments to the Financial Action Task Force so that Jamaica can eventually get off of the grey list that FATF has us on. And the bill, as I said in my opening presentation 2 weeks ago, just seeks to ensure that trust and corporate services can't be misused for AML or terrorist financing activities. I invite, Madam Speaker, contribution from the opposition, but if there isn't any, I'd move to conclude the debate.
Madam Speaker, as the Minister said, it's not a controversial bill, and therefore we have absolutely no hesitation or reluctance to continue as you are suggesting.
Minister.
Madam Speaker, therefore, graciousness extended by the opposition. I asked for a second that the bill be read a second time.
The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Act to regulate domestic trust service providers and domestic corporate service providers, to change the name of the Act to reflect the foregoing, to incorporate provisions which serve to deter the use of business operations under the Act for the purpose of money laundering, the financing of terrorism, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, to require service providers to observe customer due diligence requirements, maintain accurate records and systems of internal controls, and to provide for connected matters. Read a second time.
Yes, so just go 1, 2, 3.
Instructions are such. I put clause 1. Those in favour? Those opposed? The ayes have it. I put clause 2. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. I put clause 3. Those in favour? Those against?
Madam Speaker, may I move a motion that we put the remaining clauses, i.e. clauses 4, 5,
absolutely.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to clause 52.
Okay, so clause 3, those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. We will now put clauses 4 straight through to clause 52. Those in favour? Those against? I put the title and enacting clause. Minister, a moment. So, Marshal, House, we do have some amendments at committee stage, which is currently being finalized, which we will draw to the attention of the whole committee when finalized. I do report progress and seek the leave of the House to sit again. The question is that I do report progress and seek the leave of the House to sit again. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. I do report I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable the House to resume. I do report progress and seek leave of the House to sit again. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. House Leader, I am not seeing Mr. Mike Henry in the House, and therefore would call on the maiden presentation from the member of Clarendon, from the member of Westmoreland Central, George Wright, MP.
Madam Speaker, permit me to speak from a seat that is not my own.
Permission granted. Come a little closer. MP Wright, permission granted to speak from a seat other than your own.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me start off by expressing gratitude to the Almighty God for sustaining me and granting me the strength to be here today. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to the people of Westmoreland Central, who on September 3rd, 2020, demonstrated their confidence in my ability to represent them with a margin of victory of 1,228 voters. Madam Speaker, special thanks to councillors Donette Foster, Rudolph Yuta, Lee Simpson, my council caretaker, my management team, my family, the supporters and workers of the constituency of Westmoreland Central, the many prayer warriors who went on their knees to petition the throne of grace on on my behalf during the many difficult times. Yes. Madam Speaker, a special commendation to the members and staff of the Savlamar General Hospital and Falmouth Hospital, who have been so gracious in ensuring myself and my significant other, Ms. Tanisha Singh, to return to good health during our battle with COVID-19. Madam Speaker, I pause to note that this debate is not only important to me, but also to the people of Westmoreland Central, as it is their lives that are being impacted. Madam Speaker, the people of Westmoreland Central have voted one way for decades. The result has been poor representation, a faltering healthcare system, social and economic issues that are crippling the constituency, poor infrastructure development, a debilitating education system, and most importantly, an inadequate housing solution. Even though, Madam Speaker, at one point, the minister with responsibilities for housing was a member of parliament for Westmoreland Central. Madam Speaker, the level of neglect come to an end on the beginning of the end. Madam Speaker, this level of neglect come to an end, and the beginning of the end started in September 2020, when the people of Westmoreland Central placed their trust in the government of the Andrew Michael Holness. Madam Speaker, Westmoreland as a parish has been hit hard by COVID-19 pandemic. And as a survivor of the virus, I see it as my duty to reinforce and encourage the citizens of this country to adhere to the prescribed protocol from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Madam Speaker, as a member of Parliament, my team and I supported the Minister of Health and Wellness, have distributed over 5,000 masks, hand sanitizers, organized transportation for residents to get to the vaccination site, and provide educational pamphlets, flyers, and town criers to support the vaccination drive. Madam Speaker, we all watch the Savlamar Public General Hospital being featured on the nightly news during the height of the pandemic, which have led me, Madam Speaker, to call for plans to be put in place to add an additional wing to the hospital, which will increase the bed capacity, provide life-saving service such as ultrasound, radiological service, and CT scan. Madam Speaker, I must inform this Honourable House that my request was approved and groundbreaking was taking place and construction begins. Madam Speaker, if the Savlamar Hospital can provide this specialized service for our users, for its users, then it could ease the burden of the Cornwall Regional Hospital. I think, Madam Speaker, that it is full time the people of Westmoreland Central get the attention they deserve. Madam Speaker, we have to create tools and resources for the residents in the constituency to create opportunities for themselves and their families. Since March 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic hits our shoreline, we have seen a drastic increase in the loss of income Madam Speaker, it is important to note that a lot of residents in my constituency are employed within the tourist industry, the industry where the greatest impact of COVID-19 is felt. This is why I must thank the Minister of Finance for its CARE program, where over 100 persons were able to receive benefits. Additionally, Madam Speaker, through the CDF funds, my team and I were able to distribute over 500 care packages to the residents of my constituency. The people of Westmoreland Central have limited job opportunities within the parish. The vast majority of constituents have to travel. The vast majority of my constituents have to travel to work outside the parish. It is again this background that I suggest to the Honourable House, to the Honourable Prime Minister and the Government of Jamaica, Madam Speaker, to put the many parcels of idle land, government-owned idle land, to use by constructing a BPO sector or business hub similar to that of Freeport in St. James. Madam Speaker, the business community is willing to have dialogue with the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Honourable Everald Warmington, to further this discussion. Madam Speaker, we have begun discussion with a bamboo byproduct company that is willing to set up production within the constituency, which will result in creating over 500 jobs. The same investor, Madam Speaker, is looking to plan to develop the fourth and use it as a shipping point for its bamboo byproduct. Madam Speaker, I brought with me here today 2 huts made from bamboo. I believe, Madam Speaker, that the government of the Andrew Holness must leave an I believe, Madam Speaker, that the government of the Honourable Andrew Holness must leave an economic mark on the landscape of Westmoreland Central to widen the difference between the present government and the government of the past. Madam Speaker, as the elected representative of Westmoreland Central, I have not sat idle by ignoring the cries of the constituency, like the former members of Parliament that have plunged the constituency into economic and social ruin with their inactions. Yes. Since taking office in September of 2020, through the CDF funds, through the CDF Economic Enablement Project, I have been able to assist over 100 small business owners across the constituency. Yes. Madam Speaker, I have partnered with the SCJ and have successfully redistributed lands to small and medium-sized farmers, where they have been successful in farming and selling their product to sustain their families. Again, Madam Speaker, I am pleased to announce that I have registered over 50 new farmers. Madam Speaker, I repeat, I am pleased to announce that I have registered over 50 new farmers, and through the parish RADA office, I have distributed over $4 million in chicken, seedlings, fertilizer, fishing net, wire for fish pot, and other equipment and tools to persons in my constituency, so that they can grow what they eat and have enough to sell and earn from it. The people of Westmoreland Central are hard workers. They are industrious. And so if the proper infrastructure are in place, they can contribute to the economy in more positive ways. I am therefore using this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to seek budgetary support for a cold room storage plant in the constituency. This will facilitate the packaging and storing of excess agricultural produce, which will not only impact market stabilization and increase food security, but will also decrease scarcity, decrease unemployment, decrease the country's import bills, and most importantly, stabilization of the Jamaican dollar. Madam Speaker, I am asking that the Minister of Finance take the size and number of persons living in the constituency into consideration when allocating funds, as Westmoreland Central is one of the largest constituencies in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, Westmoreland is blessed with natural resources. We have Ruin River, Paradise Park, Venture, Mayfields Falls, Benta River and Adventure Park, Cabaretta River Rafting, and the Jamwest Motorsports and Adventure Park. These are just a few of many attraction sites that are to be enjoyed by both locals and foreigners. As such, it would be ideal, Madam Speaker, if the government of Jamaica partner with the people of Westmoreland in developing the Savalama shorelines, so that we can enjoy a slice of the cruise ship pie. Madam Speaker, Westmoreland Central has not been spared the wrath of the crime monster, but let me again pause to say thanks to the Minister of National Security, Honorable Dr. Horace Chan, for his ministry, for his commitment to build a new divisional headquarters within the constituency of Westmoreland Central. However, Madam Speaker, there are immediate concerns.
Madam Speaker, the member's time for speaking has expired. I beg to move that his time be extended sufficiently to allow him to complete his presentation.
The question is that the member be allowed sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much, Madam. However, Madam Speaker, there are immediate concerns as robberies, shooting and killing are weekly occurrence and the police are overwhelmed due to the lack of resources. Currently, to proper police the constituency, there is a need for at least 45 police personnel to have round-the-clock foot and mobile patrol in the hotspot areas. There is also a need for more motor vehicles, preferably pickups, to traverse the areas. Madam Speaker, I urge the Honourable Minister of National Security to look in the possibility of using surveillance camera within the constituency to help the fight against criminality. The miscreants have their technology. They will spot the police personnel coming from afar and hide their contraband or remove themselves to other locations before the arrival of the police. This activity, Madam Speaker, can be counterattacked by the use of drones technology and surveillance camera. These surveillance cameras should be able to be monitored locally, and there should be real-time communication between the ground personnel and the operator of these surveillance cameras. I therefore urge the Minister of National Security to take immediate action on these particular issues. Madam Speaker, I would not be able to forgive myself if I did not use this medium to profoundly thank the Honorable Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, and his ministry for the rehabilitation of the road between Ferris to Maxfield. This has increased efficiency and ease of the traveling to and from Montego Bay. It is only fitting that this piece of road should be named in honor of Andrew Michael Holness. Madam Speaker, it is critical that the rural road network be rehabilitated. I am determined not to caught sleeping on the job like my predecessors. So I have begun lobbying to have these roads rehabilitated with some amount of success. Madam Speaker, as the Honourable Minister Everald Warmington toured section of the constituency and assured the residents that the Shrewsbury Logwood Road will be fixed at a cost of $45 million. There is an additional $20 million to rehabilitate a bridge in the same community. The Welcome Main Road, which has been neglected for over 30 years, will be given some attention at a cost of over $40 million. And the Goodens River to Galloway Main Road will be fixed at a cost of over $60 million. Madam Speaker, this in addition to $3 million from the TEF Tourism Enhancement Funds to fix the Bird Mountain Main Road, and $3 million from my CDF Constituency Development Funds to fix the Bullet Tree Road, and the over $35 million that was used to fix the Rowan River Main Road brings the total amount of monies for road rehabilitation to over $200 million. All this, Madam Speaker, is an effort to harness the full potential of the constituency. Madam Speaker, while I am grateful to the Honourable Minister Everald Warmington, there is still a long way to go in addressing the rural road network. Madam Speaker, at present, vehicles cannot access the community of Porter's Mountain, and the residents are frustrated and tired of empty promises. This road has been ignored by all former members of Parliament who coincidentally were members of the same party, who boast that Westmoreland was their country, but they forgot to take care of their people. But I know, Madam Speaker, that this government is much more caring. So I advocate for this issue to be addressed. Madam Speaker, the Savlamar Hospital, the Savlamar Market is in a source of grave concern. The market is falling apart. It is in an advanced state of disrepair. The roof are non-existent. The flooring has been eroded, and there is no security and poor sanitation facility. Madam Speaker, the market is just a location. I've been lobbying since my days as councillor. I have spoken to the mayor in getting an estimate to repair the market, a task that is currently being undertaken. Madam Speaker, I want this Honourable House to visualize that this is the main food market in the parish. And it is an eyesore, but I am optimistic, Madam Speaker, that since the Honourable Minister of Local Government, Desmond Mackenzie, is hearing about this condition for the very first time, that swift and effective action will be taken, and I know him to be a reformer and a restorer of market and other programs within his portfolio. Madam Speaker, it is my dream that the residents of Westmoreland Central and the wider Westmoreland should enjoy a standard of living that is affordable, decent, and that depicts the modern society. It is therefore, Madam Speaker, that I am lobbying the government to provide additional housing for middle-income earners. Madam Speaker, it is my vision that the teachers, police officers, nurses, and other civil servants be provided housing solutions that their salary can afford. It pains my heart to see the standard of living for our teachers and nurses slowly declining to the point that that many of them cannot afford an NHT-sponsored housing unit and are forced to live in substandard condition. Westmoreland have several empty parcels of land, some of which can be used to provide housing for civil servants. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the informal settlement issue needs to be addressed. There are several communities without proper utilities, proper drainage system, and proper roads. It pains my heart, Madam Speaker, to see my people living in these conditions. The Mall Road, the ponds that form on the road whenever it rains, are causing serious challenges for my people. I only hope that that help will not be far away off. Madam Speaker, there is dignity in owning your own home and land. Dignity in living in a community without zinc fence, with electricity, pipe water, and all the modern amenities. We as elected members of Parliament must make a determined effort to rid our individual constituencies of squatters. To mitigate this situation, I have begun the process of discussing this matter with the Housing Agency of Jamaica to see how best these informal communities can be formalized. Communities such as Gullybank, Farmpen, Grotto, Hartford, Hatfield, and Galloway, just to name a few, need urgent attention, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there should be no communities in Westmoreland that should not have pipe water. The Rowan River Pump Station and the Cabaretta River have enough volume to supply the entire parish of Westmoreland and beyond. But sadly, the investment is lacking in the area, and many communities are still without the precious commodity. Madam Speaker, education is one of the surest vehicles to drive people from poverty to prosperity. Since taking office in September of 2020, I have issued over $8 million in educational grant and scholarship and education grant and scholarship, distributed over 100 tablets, 20 laptops to students within my constituency. However, Madam Speaker, this is not enough. It is a small drop in the bucket, and I will continue to seek out ways to assist students with scholarship and educational grants. Madam Speaker, one of the greatest educational concerns the residents within my constituency is that the only school remaining on shift in the parish is the Petersfield High School, and it should be taken off the shift system. This school has enough land space to build additional blocks. This school was built in 1970 to accommodate 450 students, and to date, the population is over 1,700 students. It is overcrowded. Madam Speaker, over 3 times the number of students, with very little addition to the infrastructure since it was first built. Madam Speaker, successful ministers of education had made promise to put the school on priority list for upgrade, but to date, nothing has happened. So I am therefore appealing to the Minister of Education and Information, and along with the Minister of Finance, to take a look into these issues, visit the school and speak to the stakeholders to get a better picture of this situation. Madam Speaker, the people of Westmoreland Central has put their last faith and hope in the government of the Andrew Holness because they are tired of empty promises. Let us not let them down. The people of Westmoreland in the last election showed the country that they need a change. Let us not disappoint them. Let us show them that this government is of the people and for the people. Madam Speaker, let me use this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the many stakeholders who continue to contribute valuable support in the parish of Westmoreland. Thanks to the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club of Westmoreland, the Municipal Corporation, SDC, NAA, the JCF, and the JDF. Again, I thank you all, and let us continue to partner in order to future develop our beautiful parish. Madam Speaker, I close with a quote from my idol, President Barack Obama, which states, Changes will not come if we wait on some other persons or some other time. We are the one we have been waiting for. We are the change we seek. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move for the suspension of the State of the Constituency debate until next Tuesday, when we intend, Madam Speaker, to close the debate, and the remaining speakers, who are at most two, will make their contribution. Madam Speaker, I'll have much more to say then as this historic debate comes to an end, one in which for the first time, Madam Speaker, we could say in any administration that every single member of Parliament made a contribution to the debate on the country. And that's very important. And I'll make first time that every single member of Parliament has made a contribution in a debate throughout any fiscal or other cycle in Parliament. Very, very important. Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today.
House Leader, we are going back to committee.
Oh, I'm sorry, but Madam Speaker, I was...
Unfortunately, House Leader, we have to go back to committee.
Madam Speaker, I refer to you.
Thank you so much, House Leader. I think we are now in a position to go back to committee. So, they gave me. So I need to give Minister. So, Minister, the House will now once again resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to continue consideration of the bill, clause by clause. We will recommit clauses 4 through to 52 to facilitate the Minister leading us out in respect of the amendments.
So, Chair, if we could put clauses 1 to 3, those are passed already?
We will recommit clauses 1 to 3. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, so this amendment, the first amendment, Chair, is in the enacting clause to delete the words now, therefore. And that's because those words are appropriate when a bill has a recital before going into the substantive provisions. This bill does not have a recital, so these words are not necessary.
Okay, so Minister, we will put the title and enacting clause at the end. We will continue with clause 4.
Okay, with clause 4, we are putting an amendment to delete the definition of the word entity and substitute, therefore, the following. Entity means a company or other entity constituted under any enactment that the Minister may, after consultation with the Minister responsible for commerce, by order published in the Gazette, prescribe. An international company, international company, C, a trust.
About 2.
Oh, and then 2, part 2, insert after paragraph H the following. Open quotations, HA, by deleting the term international entity and its definition.
Thank you, Minister. I put clause 4 amendments. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes has it. I put clauses 4 as amended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Clause 5. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, Clause 6.
Clause 6, Madam Chair, I have an amendment. In Clause 6, which amends Section 3 of the Principal Act, we're amending it to include the word entities to indicate that one of the objectives of regulating the sector is to protect customers as well as Jamaica's reputation. So the amendment, Madam Chair, would be in Clause sub B, in relation to paragraph C, insert immediately after the words protect the interests of the words entities and.
So, House, thank you, Minister. I put Clause 6, amendment, the amendment to Clause 6. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put Clause 6 as amended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I now put Clauses 7 through to Clause 22. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. Minister, Clause 23.
So, Clause 23, Madam Chair, Section 16 of the Principal Act is being amended to remove references to trust and trustees, as the section is intended to require legal persons, such as companies, to maintain certain due diligence information as required by Recommendation 24 of FATF. And trusts are not legal persons, and therefore it should not apply to trusts. And hence this amendment. And then the second part of the amendment deletes the words following the words 7 years, so that the requirement to maintain records for 7 years is not only applicable to client information, but also to due diligence information on the licensees themselves. So the amendment would be in Clause 1C, in subclause 1C of Clause 23, delete paragraphs A, B, and C, and substitute therefore the following. A, the name of the company or firm, and where the company is part of a group, the names of the companies within the group. B, the address of the registered office of the company or principal office of the firm. C, the names and addresses of directors of the directors of the company or firm. And 2, in paragraph F, delete subsection 3 capital A and substitute therefore the following. In quotation, 3 capital A. A licensee shall ensure that the records kept in accordance with subsections 1 capital B and 1 capital C are retained for at least 7 years.
Continue, Minister, to
no. So if you can put, I did 2 already. So if we can put the amendment to Clause 23 and then the amended Clause 23.
House.
All in.
We put the amendments to Clause 23. Those in favor? I am not hearing any ayes. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. I put Clause 23 as amended. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. I now put Clauses 24 through to 27. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. Minister, Clause 28.
Clause 28, Madam Chair. Section 28 of the Principal Act is being amended to include words that were left out during the printing process. So the amendment, Madam Speaker, would be to delete subclause 8 and substitute therefore the following. 8, a licensed service provider commits an offence and is liable on summary conviction in a parish court to a fine not exceeding $500,000 or in default of payment thereof to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 3 months, wherefore the service provider fails to notify the Commission. A, of merger or takeover of the service provider or its service business. B, that the service provider is no longer able to continue to operate the service business. C, that being a firm, company, or other entity, action is initiated to dissolve or wind up the service provider. Or D, that a composition or arrangement is made with the creditors of the service provider. That's the end of the amendment and the end of all the amendments.
I put to the House the amendment to clause 28. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. I put...
Madam Speaker, just for the record, Madam Chair, I would have thought of a good order when we reconvened. Since there was no discussion prior to resumption and completing the act, that there would have been at the very least a little statement about the graciousness of those of us who have been willing to resume and all of that. You know, with not just...
Patience, madam.
No,
I'm sure the minister planned to say so at the end.
You do it before. The graciousness don't come when it's done, my youth.
No, I'm going to thank you. I'm going to thank you for the graciousness. And will it permit me, once we...
Minister, I would want you to do so at the end, reason being, and I understand, member, but because of where we were in the amendments and the need to recommit, I decided to go through, and I know, listening to your opening remarks, that you would be so gracious, Minister. So we're going to just wrap up, and then you may be so kind as to thank the member. So, members, I recommit clauses 29 through to clause 52. Those in favour? Those opposed? The ayes have it. As it relates to putting the title and enacting clause, as Minister indicated, there was a minor amendment to the enacting clause, deleting now therefore. So I put the amended title and enacting clause, those in favour, the amendment to, and I now put the amended title and enacting clause, those in favour, those opposed, the ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 7 amendments. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Before we remove the maize, Marshall, I will ask the Minister to make a brief statement at committee stage.
No, so Madam Speaker, before I do the customary... No, she said...
You may sit to speak, Minister.
I thought you said the bill has passed committee stage.
Still in committee.
Oh, fair enough. So, Madam Chair, you know, sometimes in these positions, you know, when we're on the front, what happens in the background is not evident to everyone, but you have to have the dexterity to sometimes make lemonade out of lemons. But in making the lemonade, you can't do it on your own. You need the cooperation of others. And this occasion is one such example of that cooperation. And I'd like to take the opportunity to extend my appreciation, Madam Chair, to members of the House, and in particular to the single and sole solitary member of the opposition on this occasion, for the graciousness, understanding sometimes how these things are, and understanding the need in light of the FATF requirements. Jamaica has a commitment to get these amendments through, for the graciousness in allowing us to come back to it and to get the amendments through. That is greatly appreciated and shall not be forgotten. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And I must echo your sentiments. Thank you very much, Member Brown-Burke. Excellent cooperation in getting this bill through. We will now have... Move the mace. It's very, very unusual now that we're not moving up and down. I do report, we are back in the House, I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 7 amendments. Minister?
Madam Speaker, I now move that the bill be read a third time.
Question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
a bill entitled An Act to Amend the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Act to regulate domestic trust service providers and domestic corporate service providers, to change the name of the Act to reflect the foregoing, to incorporate provisions which serve to deter the use of business operations under the Act for the purpose of money laundering, the financing of terrorism, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, to receive service providers to observe customer due diligence requirements, maintain accurate records and systems of internal controls, and to provide for connected matters read a third time and to pass.
Thank you. Yes, bill is passed. So we will go back to making a statement as it relates to the suspension of the State of the Constituency debate. Those in favour? Those opposed? The ayes have it. And as House Leader indicated, there being no further business for consideration today, we would now have the House stand adjourned until next Tuesday, the 16th of November at 2 p.m. sharp. Those in favour? Those opposed? The ayes have it. This Honourable House now stands adjourned.
Not all heroes